I've been married to Cassandra for 10 years, and I thought we had something solid. We met in college, got married young, and built a life together that I believed was good. Cassandra works in marketing, and I'm in software development. Between the two of us, we were making decent money. Her family was always involved, maybe too involved, but I thought it was just part of marrying into a close-knit family. Her sisters Sharon and Bryn, and her mother Geraldine, were constantly in our business, but I dealt with it because I loved Cassandra. What I didn't know was how much they all actually hated me. 3 weeks ago, I was helping Cassandra set up her new iPhone. She had been complaining that her old one was too slow, so she finally upgraded. While transferring her apps and data, I was logged into her iCloud to make sure everything synced properly. She was in the shower, and her notifications were going crazy on my laptop screen. I thought it was work stuff, since she's always bombarded with messages. But then I saw a WhatsApp notification from a group called Operation Divorce Dan. My name is Dan. I clicked on WhatsApp through the browser, and there it was, a group chat with Cassandra, Sharon, Bryn, and Geraldine. The messages made my blood run cold. But I kept reading because I needed to see exactly what I was dealing with. Sharon had written, "He's so stupid. He actually thinks we're celebrating 10 years. This is going to be perfect." Bryn replied, "I already called the moving company. We can clear his stuff while he's at work Thursday. Everything goes to storage unit 247, on 5th Street. Mom got the key yesterday." Geraldine chimed in, "My lawyer friend has the divorce papers ready. Dan will be served right at the party. He'll be homeless by 6 p.m. Can't wait to see his face." Cassandra had sent a laughing emoji and added, "We should film it for TikTok. Watch this loser get what he deserves." Then she wrote, 10 years of pretending to love this pathetic man, and I can finally be free." I screenshot everything, every single message going back months. They had been planning this for half a year, timing it perfectly for our anniversary celebration, which I thought we were having this Saturday. The surprise party I thought Cassandra was throwing for us was actually my own eviction and divorce ambush. The messages revealed so much more. They talked about how they'd always seen me as beneath their family. How Cassandra only married me because she was pregnant in senior year, something I never knew since she miscarried early and never told me it was the reason for our quick engagement. They had been waiting for the right moment to destroy me completely. Sharon mentioned that I was too comfortable and needed to be knocked down a few pegs. Bryn said they wanted me to lose everything so I'd learn my place. Geraldine kept calling me worthless and said her daughter deserved better than some nobody programmer. They had it all planned out. Cassandra was going to act normal all week and then invite me to what I thought was our anniversary dinner Saturday evening. Instead, I would walk into a room full of divorce papers and moving boxes, with all of them filming my reaction for social media. They wanted to humiliate me completely. What they didn't know was that I had been expecting something like this for a while. Not exactly this, but I had sensed the coldness in their behavior, the way they looked at me during family gatherings, the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room. I had been quietly preparing for years, making sure I was financially protected and legally covered if Cassandra ever tried to leave me with nothing. I wasn't the stupid nobody programmer they thought I was. I'd been building wealth through investments and side projects they knew nothing about. I had assets in my name only, backup plans they hadn't considered, and connections they were completely unaware of. While they'd been plotting for 6 months, I'd been positioning myself for 4 years. I'd spent the last 3 weeks acting completely normal, while taking screenshots of every new message they sent. They kept adding details about their plan, getting more excited about Saturday. Yesterday, Cassandra even asked me what time I wanted to leave for our special dinner, and I could barely keep a straight face, knowing what she really meant. The storage unit they rented. I knew exactly where it was. Bryn had used my credit card details when I helped her move last year. She still had my details saved and figured I'd never notice a storage rental charge, but I monitor every transaction on every account I have. I'd been watching that unit for weeks. What made this even better was that during my 3 weeks of monitoring their chat, I learned they had been moving my stuff gradually, piece by piece, when I was at work. They thought they were being clever, taking things I wouldn't notice right away, old college textbooks, some tools from the garage, Winter clothes I wouldn't need until months from now. They had this whole system worked out. Bryn would text when the coast was clear. Sharon would bring her SUV, and they'd load up whatever they could carry. They documented everything with photos, making lists of what they had taken and what was left to grab. So I drove straight to the storage unit and cleared it out, every single box, every piece of furniture they had already moved. I had my own truck and moved everything to a facility across town that they would never find. I changed the locks on their unit and prepaid for 6 months in my name only. But here's where it gets interesting. I didn't just move my stuff, I replaced it. I filled their storage unit with all the items from my home office that I had been wanting to get rid of for years. Old broken electronics, outdated computer equipment, stacks of useless paperwork. I made it look like someone had definitely been there and cleared out valuable items, leaving behind obvious junk. Then I went home and waited. Cassandra came back around 5 p.m. with Sharon and Bryn. They were all giggly and excited, clearly thinking they were about to pull off the perfect ambush. Geraldine showed up at 6:30 with a manila envelope that I assumed contained the divorce papers. At exactly 7 p.m., Cassandra told me it was time to leave for our anniversary dinner. We got in my car, and she directed me to drive to Sharon's house. When we pulled up, I could see movement through the windows, and I knew this was it. Cassandra said she wanted to stop by quickly to pick something up. The moment we walked through the door, they were all standing there with huge grins on their faces. Geraldine stepped forward with the envelope, and Sharon had her phone out, clearly ready to record. That's when I said the words, "I've been practicing for 3 weeks. Before you start filming, you might want to check storage unit 247. The looks on their faces were priceless. Cassandra went completely white. Bryn actually dropped her phone. Sharon started asking what I meant, but I could see the panic building. I told them I knew about Operation Divorce Dan. I knew about every single message, every plan, every detail they'd spent months putting together. I pulled out my phone and started reading their own words back to them. The room exploded. Cassandra immediately started screaming that I had invaded her privacy, that I was crazy for spying on her personal conversations. Geraldine demanded to know how I had accessed private family discussions. Sharon kept yelling that I was sick and manipulative. But here's what was beautiful about the whole thing. They couldn't deny what they had said. Every cruel word, every plan to humiliate me, every insult they had thrown around for months. It was all right there in black and white. Cassandra tried to claim that it was just venting, that they never actually planned to go through with any of it. Except I had screenshots from yesterday showing Bryn confirming the moving truck rental, and Geraldine talking about serving me papers that night. The argument went on for over an hour and got ugly. Bryn kept insisting that I deserved everything they'd planned, because I was a deadbeat who had been holding Cassandra back for years. She said I was dead weight, and that Cassandra could have married someone successful if she hadn't gotten stuck with me. Sharon said I was pathetic and needed to accept that their family had never wanted me around, that they'd been hoping Cassandra would come to her senses for years. But Geraldine, she got really angry. She started telling me that I had no idea who I was messing with, that her family had connections and resources I couldn't imagine. She said I had made a huge mistake thinking I could outsmart them. That's when I told them about the storage unit being cleared out, about how the moving company they had hired was going to show up Monday to an empty space, about how every single part of their perfect plan had already fallen apart. I also mentioned a few other details I'd kept to myself, like how I'd been recording our conversations for the past 2 weeks using an app on my phone, how I documented every time Cassandra had lied to my face about her plans, how I had been building a case showing their conspiracy to defraud me. The screaming match that followed was incredible. Cassandra accused me of stealing from them, even though it was literally my own possessions. Bryn started demanding to know where I had moved everything. Sharon threatened to call the police. Geraldine kept escalating, saying she was going to ruin my career, that she had friends who could make sure I never worked in tech again. She was ranting about how her deceased husband had built a network of powerful people, and how she could destroy me financially and professionally. So I called their bluff. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 right there in front of them. When the operator answered, I said I wanted to report identity theft and credit card fraud. and that I had documentation showing someone had used my financial information to rent storage space without my permission. They shut up real fast. The police didn't come out since I told the operator I'd resolved the immediate issue, but the point was made. Everything they had done could be turned around on them legally, and they knew it. I left them standing there and drove home. Cassandra rode back in complete silence, probably trying to figure out her next move. When we got inside, she immediately went to our bedroom and slammed the door. I could hear her on the phone with someone, probably one of her sisters, but I couldn't make out the words. About an hour later, she came out and tried a completely different approach. Suddenly, she was apologetic, saying the group chat was just family drama, and that she never meant any of it. She claimed her sisters had pressured her into going along with their plan, and that she'd been trying to find a way out of it. She said she loved me and wanted to work things out, that we could go to counseling and fix our marriage. She even suggested we could renew our vows and have a real celebration of our 10 years together. I listened to every word and didn't believe a single one. This woman had spent months planning to humiliate me publicly, had called me pathetic and worthless to her family, had arranged to have me served with divorce papers as entertainment for their social media. But here's the thing, Reddit. This was just the opening shot. They think losing their storage access and having their plan exposed is the worst I can do to them. They think Cassandra can sweet-talk her way out of this, and everything will go back to normal. They have no idea what's coming next. See, while they were spending months planning Operation Divorce, Dan, I was spending years preparing for something exactly like this. I've got financial strategies they don't know about, legal protections they never considered, and backup plans for situations they can't even imagine. Remember how I mentioned in my first post that I've been building wealth through investments and side projects? Well, there's a lot more to that story. I've been systematically protecting myself from exactly this kind of family manipulation for the past 4 years. Every asset, every account, every legal document has been structured to prevent them from being able to destroy me financially. The storage unit switch was just me letting them know I'm not the stupid, helpless victim they thought I was. But the real pressure hasn't even started yet. Monday morning is going to be very interesting for all 3 of these women. Monday started early. Cassandra left for work around 7:30 a.m., still trying to act like everything was normal between us. She even kissed me goodbye and said she hoped we could talk more about fixing our marriage when she got home. I just nodded and told her to have a good day. At 8 a.m. sharp, I made my first move. See, during my 4 years of preparation, I hadn't just been building wealth and protecting assets. I'd been learning everything I could about each member of this family. Their jobs, their finances, their dependencies, their pressure points. Information is power, and I'd been collecting it methodically. These women thought they knew everything about me, but they'd never bothered to actually pay attention to what I was capable of. They saw a quiet programmer who didn't make waves at family gatherings, and they assumed that meant I was weak and controllable. Cassandra works for a small marketing firm that handles social media campaigns for local businesses. What she doesn't know is that I've been freelancing web development services to 3 of their biggest clients for the past 2 years, not through her company, directly with the business owners. At 8 a.m., I sent detailed proposals to all 3 clients offering to handle their complete digital presence in-house for significantly less than what they're currently paying her company. By 9:15 a.m., I had signed contracts with 2 of them and a verbal commitment from the 3rd. Cassandra's firm just lost 60% of their revenue in 90 minutes. Sharon works as a rental property manager for a company that handles about 40 apartment units across town. What she doesn't realize is that I know her boss, Brandon, from college. We weren't close friends, but we stayed in loose contact through LinkedIn. At 10 a.m., I called Brandon and told him I needed to discuss a serious problem with one of his employees. I explained that Sharon had been using company resources for personal vendettas, specifically using her access to tenant information and management systems to coordinate harassment campaigns against family members. I didn't accuse her of anything illegal. I just laid out the facts. Sharon had used her work computer to research storage facilities for their Operation Divorce Dan. She'd scheduled personal activities during work hours, including the moving truck coordination. She'd even used the company vehicle for some of their stuff moving trips. Brandon took it very seriously. By noon, Sharon was in a meeting with HR discussing her inappropriate use of company resources and violation of privacy policies. Bryn was next, and she was actually the easiest target. Bryn works part-time at a dental office and depends on weekend catering gigs to make ends meet. She's built up a decent reputation doing small events and parties around town. What makes this perfect is that most of her clients book her through social media recommendations and word-of-mouth referrals. I spent Monday afternoon creating detailed social media posts about my recent anniversary experience. Nothing defamatory, nothing that could get me in legal trouble, just honest accounts of how certain local service providers had disappointed me during what should have been a special celebration. I described how a catering coordinator I'd hired for a family event had been secretly working with relatives to sabotage the occasion. I posted screenshots of her own messages detailing her plans to ruin our celebration. I tagged every local event planning group, wedding venue, and party supply company in town. Posted in all the community Facebook groups where people regularly asked for catering recommendations. By Tuesday morning, Bryn had lost 3 upcoming weekend bookings and received several messages from potential clients saying they'd decided to go with other caterers. But Geraldine was the main event. Remember how she kept threatening me with her connections and resources? How she claimed her deceased husband had built a network of powerful people who could destroy me financially and professionally? Well, I decided to test those connections. See, Geraldine's husband used to own a small construction business before he passed away 5 years ago. After his death, she kept the business name and licensing active, even though she doesn't actually do construction work anymore. She uses it occasionally for tax purposes and to maintain some business credibility in social settings. What she doesn't know is that maintaining an active business license creates certain legal obligations and reporting requirements. And if you're not actually conducting business operations, there can be complications with licensing boards and regulatory agencies. Tuesday afternoon, I filed formal complaints with the State Contractor Licensing Board and the local Business Regulatory Office. I documented how the business appears to be inactive despite maintaining active licensing, raised questions about potential misrepresentation to regulatory agencies, and requested formal investigations into the business operations. Again, nothing illegal on my part. Just a concerned citizen asking legitimate questions about business compliance and proper licensing procedures. But here's where it gets really interesting. By Wednesday morning, all 3 women were starting to panic. Cassandra came home Tuesday night devastated because her boss had called an emergency meeting about their client losses. Sharon was facing a formal investigation at work and possible termination. Bryn was frantically trying to rebuild her reputation while watching her weekend income disappear. And Geraldine, she'd received official notices from 2 different regulatory agencies requesting documentation about her business operations and informing her of pending compliance reviews. Wednesday evening, they all showed up at my house together. This time there was no fake sweetness, no pretending everything was fine. They were furious and desperate, and they wanted answers. Cassandra was screaming that I was destroying innocent people's livelihoods over a stupid family disagreement. She kept saying that her coworkers were going to lose their jobs because of my vindictive behavior. Sharon kept demanding that I call Brandon and tell him that everything I'd reported was lies. She was panicking because she needed her job to pay for her car and apartment, and she couldn't afford to be unemployed. Bryn was crying and begging me to take down the social media post because she couldn't afford to lose her catering income. She said her rent was due next week, and she was counting on the weekend bookings to make her payment. But Geraldine was different. She wasn't begging or threatening anymore. She was calculating, trying to figure out exactly how much I knew and what I was planning next. She asked me directly what I wanted, what it would take for me to stop. She said they'd learned their lesson and would leave me alone if I would just stop targeting their jobs and businesses. That's when I told them the truth. This wasn't about teaching them a lesson or getting them to leave me alone. This was about showing them exactly what happens when you try to destroy someone who's been preparing for years to defend himself. I told them that everything they'd lost so far was just the beginning. That I'd spent 4 years building the resources and connections to protect myself from exactly what they'd tried to do to me. And now they were going to experience firsthand what it feels like to have someone systematically dismantle the life you've built. Geraldine asked me what I wanted from what they could do to make this stop. I told her there was nothing they could do. They'd made their choice when they decided to plan Operation Divorce Dan. Now they were going to live with the consequences. That's when she said something that made everything click into place. She told me that I had no idea what I was dealing with, that their family had been handling troublemakers like me for decades, and that I was about to learn why people in this town knew better than to cross them. She said they'd been protecting Cassandra from making mistakes her whole life, and that marrying me had been the biggest mistake she'd ever made, that they'd spent 10 years watching me hold their daughter back from her potential, and they weren't going to let me destroy her future. Finally, I understood why they hated me so much. It wasn't just about thinking I was beneath them. They genuinely believed I was ruining Cassandra's life by existing in it. From their perspective, I was the obstacle preventing their daughter from reaching her full potential. They saw me as dead weight holding her back from the successful husband they thought she deserved. In their minds, Operation Divorce Dan wasn't cruelty, it was an intervention. But understanding their motivation didn't change anything. If anything, it made me more determined to show them exactly how wrong they were about who was really in control here. I told them that what they'd experienced so far was just a preview of what real consequences looked like, and that every move I'd made had been calculated and deliberate, designed to target the specific things each of them cared about most. Friday morning, they were going to get a very special delivery that would make everything I'd done so far look like practice rounds. Because the thing they still didn't understand is that I wasn't trying to teach them a lesson or get them to apologize. I was systematically dismantling the comfortable lives they built while planning to destroy mine. And we were just getting started. Friday morning arrived, and my promised special delivery was right on schedule. At 9 a.m. sharp, 3 different process servers showed up at 3 different addresses. Cassandra got served at her office right in front of her coworkers. Sharon at her apartment building where all her neighbors could see, and Bryn at the dental office where she works part-time. Geraldine got her delivery at home. The documents were eviction notices, but not the kind you might expect. See, here's what I never told any of them during our 10 years together. That house Cassandra and I live in, the one she thinks we both own, I bought it outright 3 years ago using profits from my side business ventures. Her name was never on the deed, never on the mortgage, never on any of the legal documents. She'd been living there as my guest this entire time, completely unaware that she had no legal claim to the property. The eviction notice gave her 30 days to vacate the premises, citing irreconcilable differences and breakdown of the domestic partnership. Completely legal, completely enforceable. But that wasn't all. Sharon's apartment? Turns out the building is owned by a property investment group that I'd been doing web development work for over the past 18 months. When I told them about my concerns regarding their property manager's misuse of company resources and potential liability issues, they took it very seriously. Her lease termination notice cited violations of building policies and potential conflicts of interest with the management company. Bryn rents a small house from an elderly couple who live out of state. What she doesn't know is that I'd been handling their property management website, an online rent collection system for the past year. When I informed them about their tenants' involvement in harassment campaigns and potential reputational damage to their property, they decided not to renew her month-to-month lease. And Geraldine? Her situation was the most complicated, but also the most satisfying. The regulatory investigations I triggered had uncovered some interesting discrepancies in her business filings. Nothing criminal, but enough to create serious complications with her property taxes and homeowners insurance. Turns out maintaining an inactive business license while claiming residential property exemptions creates some messy legal gray areas. Her notice wasn't an eviction. It was a foreclosure warning. The complications with her business status had triggered a review of her mortgage terms, and some technical violations gave the bank grounds to call in the loan. By Friday afternoon, all 3 women had called me, not together this time, but separately, each trying a different approach. Cassandra came home crying, begging me to reconsider. She said she'd do anything to fix our marriage, that she'd cut off contact with her family completely if I would just let her stay. She promised to go to counseling to change everything about herself to make up for the Operation Divorce Dan plan. She even offered to sign a post-nup agreement, giving me complete control over our finances. I listened to every word and told her that her 30 days started today. Sharon called me around 6 p.m., absolutely frantic. She said losing her job and her apartment in the same week was going to destroy her financially. She offered to pay me money to work for me for free. Anything to convince me to call off the property managers. She kept saying she had learned her lesson and would never interfere in my life again. I told her that the consequences of her actions were just beginning to unfold. Bryn showed up at my house Saturday morning, sobbing uncontrollably. She said she'd already lost most of her catering clients, and now she was going to be homeless too. She kept asking what she could do to make this stop, what she could offer me to fix the situation. She said she had some savings and would give me every penny if I would just help her keep her rental house. I reminded her that she'd been excited about filming my reaction for TikTok when they thought they were destroying my life. I asked her how it felt to be on the other side of that equation. But Geraldine's response was different. She didn't beg or cry or offer me anything. She came to my house Saturday evening with a cold, calculating look and told me that I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. She said her family had connections I couldn't imagine, resources I didn't understand, and ways of handling problems that I wasn't prepared for. She said she'd spent the past 2 days making phone calls, and that I was about to learn why people in this town knew better than to cross her family. I asked her how those connections were working out for her foreclosure problem. That's when she finally started to break. She admitted that most of her husband's old business contacts had moved away or retired over the past 5 years. That the powerful network she'd been threatening me with was mostly just memories and old business cards. She said she'd been trying to maintain an image of influence and control to protect her family's reputation, but that the reality was much different. Her husband's death had left her with more debts than assets, and she'd been struggling financially for years while pretending everything was fine. The business license issues weren't just bureaucratic problems. They were the final straw that exposed how precarious her situation really was. By Sunday morning, the reality was setting in for all of them. Cassandra had spent the weekend frantically calling family members and friends trying to find somewhere to stay, but word had gotten around about our marriage problems, and most people didn't want to get involved in what looked like a messy divorce situation. Sharon had been denied for emergency housing assistance because her income loss was too recent to qualify for programs. Her savings account couldn't cover a security deposit and first month's rent on a new place. Bryn had tried to stay with friends, but with her reputation destroyed in the local catering community, she couldn't offer any services in exchange for housing. She'd spent Saturday night in her car in a Walmart parking lot. And Geraldine? The foreclosure timeline was accelerated due to the business compliance issues. She had less than 2 weeks to come up with a substantial payment or find alternative housing. Sunday evening, they all showed up at my house together one final time. This wasn't the angry confrontation from earlier in the week. This was pure desperation. They stood on my doorstep looking exhausted, defeated, and scared. Cassandra had obviously been crying for hours. Sharon kept checking her phone like she was waiting for some miracle call. Bryn looked like she hadn't slept. Geraldine seemed to have aged 10 years in the past week. Cassandra spoke first, saying they were sorry for everything, that they'd never meant for things to go this far. That Operation Divorce Dan was just stupid family drama that got out of hand. Sharon said they realized they'd made a huge mistake, that they'd learned their lesson and would never do anything like this again. Bryn was crying while she talked, saying she was sorry for planning to film my humiliation, that she understood now how cruel and thoughtless it was. Geraldine said they were begging me to show mercy, that they'd all learned their lesson and just wanted a chance to rebuild their lives. I listened to every word, and then I told them exactly what I'd been planning to say for 4 years. I said that everything happening to them was the direct result of choices they'd made. That Operation Divorce Dan wasn't harmless family drama. It was a calculated plan to destroy my life for their entertainment. I reminded them that they'd wanted to film my reaction when I lost my home, my marriage, and my dignity. That they'd been excited about watching me suffer while they celebrated my destruction. I told them that the only difference between their plan and my response was that I'd actually succeeded. They kept begging, offering to do anything, promising to make amends however they could. I told them there was nothing they could offer me that would change the consequences of their actions. That they taught me exactly how much their family valued loyalty and respect. And now they were learning what it felt like to be on the receiving end of that lesson. As I closed the door, I could hear them outside discussing where they were going to sleep that night. It's been 3 days since then. I've seen Cassandra's car parked behind the grocery store where she's apparently spending her nights. Sharon has been staying in the parking lot of a 24-hour laundromat. Bryn and Geraldine have been sharing Geraldine's car, moving between different locations to avoid drawing attention from security or police. They've been texting me constantly, calling me, leaving voicemails. All variations of the same message. We're sorry, we didn't mean it. Please. The desperation in their voices grows more obvious with each message. Cassandra sent me a 40-minute voicemail yesterday just crying and apologizing over and over again, but I'm not answering. For years ago, when I first sensed their contempt and started preparing for this possibility, I promised myself that if they ever tried to destroy me, I would be ready to destroy them right back. I spent those years building my resources, establishing my connections, and positioning myself to be untouchable. They wanted to watch me lose everything while they laughed and filmed it for social media. Instead, they're sleeping in their cars while I'm living comfortably in my house with my successful business and my financial security intact. The operation was called Divorce Dan. I guess you could say the operation was a complete success, just not the way they planned.